Sounds to me like you're daunted. Say it again like you're undaunted.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Whenever you are watching this is the Often Daunted podcast. Yes, I said watching because this is the third episode that we have on YouTube. This is the 107th episode of the podcast in total. Please, if you do enjoy if you stumbled upon the YouTube, congratulations. You found the depth of the well of Indiana content out there. I can't appreciate you enough for searching it out. Go ahead, give me a subscribe. You made your way here, man. Like just hop on board. You're at the ground level. Show's only going to get better from here. I can't appreciate you for going out of your way and finding it. Yeah, we'll get on to that. But yeah, like I said, the 107th episode of the audio podcast. I'm going to keep putting it out there for anyone who wants to listen to me on their way to work, home from work, just whatever it may be the case. Audio will always be available for those who, started following me there. I can't thank you enough. Yes, if you are listening to audio, yes, please subscribe to the show, leave a review. Doesn't cost you nothing, just only helps my ego. Goes a long way in keeping me going here, and I appreciate it. Again, this is the Often Daunted podcast, and as we do on each episode here in the offseason leading up to the games, I will be getting into the Indiana news before getting on to the national and the conference news. That is before a new segment, this one being the Flaunted and the Daunted. I'm just giving, my Flaunted and Daunted for each week, just a really dumb grouping of each, how podcasts do. After that, I'll get on to the Burke's Big Five. And this episode, it is going to be the Burke's Big Five, Big Ten nickname origins. I'm going to be looking at the history of the teams around the Big Ten and which origins I really enjoy. Some of them are utter trash. Here's looking at you, Michigan State. And then after that, yes, there was the short segment of the Flaunted and the Daunted. But as we do on the episodes, usually here on the offseason, I'm going to have a segment. And this week's segment, I don't have a guest on. It's just going to be me, solo dolo here. And I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on the Big Ten Media Day, our opponents, some thoughts on Mike Woodson, our two representatives. I'm going to be digging into that, sharing some of Kat's thoughts on it, sharing some of Fanta's thoughts on it. But then I will be giving out my power rankings for each position in the Big Ten. That is going through each position and supplying 5 players for each, just where I see them. And yes, it is entirely biased. And if you're here from any other school other than Indiana, buckle up because it's probably going to be rough. So, yes, again, 5 players each position. And then after all that, we will get you out of here with a Hoosier history hit, as we always do. Thank you again so much, Hoosiers. Basketball season's right around the corner, but you know what? It is pretty crazy this October that we're having, in that it's usually a case of it can't get here fast enough because football's all but done. And that just isn't the case. It's an entirely new feeling for an Indiana fan, and I welcome it. We'll get onto it in the Indiana news. All right, at the top of the Indiana news, Sig's everything, man. Sig is everything. We need to follow Sig to the ends of the earth. This guy came in, flipped a program that has been historically trash, is so trash. Indiana football, so trash until Sig arrives, and he just rewrites the whole script on expectations for not only the players, but the fans, man. If you're watching this team, they are operating with such precision. It is mechanized. They are a unit. The defense, yeah, they left a lot to be desired against Northwestern, but it's an entirely different Indiana. We don't see the usual lapses and errors that came every other play. This team is fine-tuned. Sig sweats the small stuff, and that's why he wins. Google him. Man, it is crazy supporting a winner. And I can't thank him enough for what he's done not only, it's so much more, man. My fandom is revived by this man. I'm enjoying college football. It's crazy. And I owe it all to Sig. Signetti I follow him to the ends of the earth. For everyone who thinks we can't pay him, you're downright wrong. We'll find money. we'll find money to keep this wagon rolling. And Sig is absolutely never daunted. And the way this team plays, I am confident. Like, even though the game was close against Northwestern, it wasn't in my head. I was like, any moment, this team, they just keep doing it. They do it over and over and over again. And yes, teams can compete for a quarter, 2 quarters, but they cannot go all 4 with just the offense that Sig has out there right now. It's impressive, and I'm over the moon about it. All right, enough of football. Indiana basketball hosted its pro day just this last Saturday, and all 30 NBA teams were in attendance to get a load of the Hoosiers. And I have to say, as far as prospects on the roster, this Indiana pro day, it's got to be an exciting one for scouts. There are quite a few guys on this squad who are going to be available to quite a few teams in the draft. They aren't just for sure lottery talents, but the likes of McKenzie, the likes of Kanan Carlisle, and the likes of Bryson Tucker, I'm sure they were all getting solid looks by the NBA. And then the other guys just get the peripheral looks. Sometimes that's enough. Having these Indiana pro days, that's a huge deal that Mike Woodson has made these an event that NBA teams are going to attend. They're going to get the best look they can at the guys that Indiana has on the roster. And credit to Mike Woodson and staff for being able to continually just garner a roster that has guys worth looking at. Because it doesn't just help those guys, it helps the guys around them sometimes. And as a college athlete, all you want are the looks, all you want are the opportunities. If Indiana can keep selling that, we get consistent opportunities like this to the players that come here, that's a good thing for this program. Heck yeah. Well done, Mike. Indiana Pro Day. It's got to stay. Other Indiana news, what could have been in the wake of the Derrick Rose retirement. Eric Gordon was on Jeff Teague's podcast, and he had some words to say about D. Rose. He said, me and D. Rose, we were supposed to go to the same college, Gordon said. It was either Illinois, maybe IU, maybe Memphis, and we heard a lot of things in Illinois, what was going on there. But my heart was always in Indy, and I wanted to play at IU. It all worked out in the end. I went to IU. He went to Memphis. But I thought we were going to go to IU at one point. To which I say, man, should I know that was an option now? Pay Derrick Rose all the money. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, it's frowned upon. Pay him all the money. What is the worst that can happen if we pay Derrick Rose? We get scholarships taken away for our recruiting practices during this time? That would be a real damn shame for an Indiana fan. God, the idea that we had the opportunity to pay him, we should have paid him back in the day. Of course, Eric Gordon can just throw that out there and make all of us Indiana fans just daydream about what that could have looked like. More than that, Jeff Teague went on to say they tried to put us in a 3-guard lineup. I remember Coach Kelvin Sampson called me and he was like, I'm getting Derrick Rose, and I'm getting Eric Gordon. I said, why you think I'm going there? You can hang up this call. Yeah, all right. Wake Forest, here I come. I was like, no way. He called me and I was like, Eric's going to Illinois. He was like, not on my freaking watch. He literally said that, but he said F, and I'm just cleaning it up for the first 10 minutes here on YouTube. That 3-guard lineup, that would have been absolutely something to see. I just wanted to bring it up to your attention because it's fun to daydream here in the offseason. We will have real basketball to talk about here soon enough, but until then, let's have some fun. Per Zach Osterman at the Indy Star, in so many words, Indiana's supportive as hell. Per him, actually. Athlete.org quizzed more than 1,300 members across all of its represented schools, asking athletes to rate their schools from 1 to 5, 5 being the most favorable across 9 distinct categories. Read much. Collecting and averaging those numbers together, athletes.org generated an overall rating out of 5 for each school. Indiana landed 7th on that list with an overall score of 4.4 out of 5. with that top 10 being 1, the Ohio State University, 2, Clemson, 3, Purdue, 4, Iowa, 5, Maryland, 6, Michigan State, and again, Indiana at 7, University of Illinois at 8. Nobody else really matters, but Indiana, 7th most supportive to their college athletes, just based on an internal poll. Pretty tough to gauge what that all means, not having that test in my hands, but nice to know that Indiana's included on there. We're being supportive in at least the eyes of some of our athletes. Just a little shout out to Miller Kopp's podcast. He continues to have just sit down banger after sit down banger with our team. Last week we got Myles Rice, and that kid's mentality is just different. When discussing his work ethic, he said everything you'd want to hear from our point guard. When discussing, he will absolutely have to be a tone setter on both ends of the floor. And Myles has been through enough to be let me think of the word, a cornerstone, a rock for this team to turn to when times might get tough on either end. You know, it's a different mentality that is needed to put your feet up and like, in order to get through chemotherapy, it is a different mentality for him to, really just put his head down and get through this and come back as strong as ever. I mean, he came back a better player than he went to chemo, which is crazy. Myles Rice is a kid who's going to see the trials that could come with the Big Ten regular season, with the expectations that come with being Indiana's point guard, and he's going to punch him in the mouth. I'm excited to have this kid on my team. He's a tough SOB. No offense to any of his family. I mean that in the best way. And again, just Miller's podcast, the player's perspective continues to be a must listen for anyone out there just looking to keep tabs on these guys. Really great insight, and really nice to see how Miller again is able to just tap into something with these guys that most interviewers aren't, just in that he is one of them. He's been there. He knows, they know, he knows. And it's an awesome perspective on Indiana basketball right now. Just this week or last week, Umar Ballo was named part of the Big Ten's official preseason All Big Ten team. I'll get into that officially in the segment when I'm discussing Big Ten Media Day and everything out of that. Recently, in an announcement, the Indiana University administration has announced that the IU Auditorium's North Garden is going to be getting a new addition on October 18th, and that is a statue of John Mellencamp. That statue will be joining the likes of Hoagie Carmichael there on the north side of the building, and I have to say it's a nice addition, man. John Mellencamp, he's synonymous with our university. Some people might not like it. I freaking love it. I have to imagine the Bluebird was awesome to see him in. But yeah, if we're talking events on campus, there is another event on campus, an event that is going to be at that same spot, a little further west, just right there at the Fine Arts Plaza. But this Friday, it might be of much more importance because my insight into the honky-tonk levels of B-Town at any given moment, B-Town Moose, he shared a finding that he saw on campus, and that was outside of Franklin Hall. Posted on the Franklin Hall sign was a banner or a flyer for an event coming up on campus. And this event just merely says, watch one man attempt to eat 25 chicken fingers this Friday, 4 p.m., Fine Arts Plaza. And then the note says, we're changing the culture of IU. That's all it was. So, I mean, there's an event going down this Friday. If you're on campus, you have to see this man eat 25 chicken fingers. Not just to see if it's like an incredible feat, but more so to see if it's not. 25 chicken fingers. That's either incredible or quite a letdown, because you got to think the size of the chicken fingers is going to be, I mean, the ultimate test. Are we talking Raging Cajuns where like those are some big meaty boys. Or are they just going to be little like freezer chicken fingers, just that you're picking up out of your Aldi's? It's going to be interesting. I would love to know. I need a little more insight into this event. Again, watch one man attempt to eat 25 chicken fingers this Friday, 4 p.m. Fine Arts Plaza. If you are on campus and you're not there, you're losing out. Friday, 4 p.m. Fine Arts Plaza. The three man Weave podcast recently released their Big Ten preview. And I just had a few takeaways. I love how much, if you guys found this show, you've listened to the Three Man Weave podcast because you are a degenerate for Indiana content. But I love how much Jim hates the Hoosiers. He hates on Matthew for whenever he bears an ounce of, homerhood. Jim Roots hates the Hoosiers, as he does every year, and he absolutely did in this preview. But Matthew made sure to state that Woodson's roster is too good to fail. I had to respect him on that. Matthew fights the good fight on that podcast, and I respect him for it. Kai was in Matthew's corner, backing him up, stating that he thought what Ballo brings defensively has even been downplayed, as talking heads have looked to critique one of the best transfers of the season. And I have to say, I greatly appreciated that on behalf of our big man. Matthew, Kai was in his corner saying that. And I thought it was a great point. It seems like when you do have these top-rated transfers, a lot of people were looking to nitpick Ballo's game. Objectively, sit back and watch him play. The dude's a beast. You want him on your team. He's an animal. He's ferocious. And glad to see that Kai had Matthew's back on that one. Lastly, before recruiting notes. God, I'm on fire today. Recruiting notes. Lastly, before recruiting notes, Hoosiers in the NBA. Media Day TJD. And, you're going to have a chance to ask TJD a question. What were they going to ask him? They were going to ask him about football. TJD had some glowing words to say, saying, I'm not going to say we're not just a basketball school, or we are. We are an everything school. We're a soccer school. We've had natties in soccer, basketball, and now football is on the rise. So shout out Coach Sig and the Hoosiers. And God, you said it. You said it right there. Shout out Coach Sig and the Hoosiers, Trace. Glad to see just Indiana football being brought up in NBA Media Day, something. Other Hoosiers in the NBA, Hood-Schifino finished his preseason opener with 6.6 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 block, 1 steal, and 0 turnovers. I just wanted to share that because I really am concerned that the biggest circus in all of basketball, this Bronny James forced playing time nonsense, is going to come at the expense of one individual in maybe the whole country. That is, other than Bronny James, because I think ultimately this is going to come at his expense. You can say, oh, yeah, he got him an NBA contract. Yeah, it's nothing compared to the money he's just going to make when just being a James. He's also a victim in this, the way they're forcing him through it. It's crazy. It's sad to watch. But Jalen Hood-Schifino is going to be a victim, and he will be the casualty in the Bronny James forced playing time situation. And it's a damn shame. Lastly, recruiting. Since our last episode, I believe I put a disclaimer in the description of my last video episode. We lost out on Jalen Harrelson. In reality, it stinks. It truly does. But on the bright side, I'm going to tell myself he saw the writing on the wall. He saw the fact that we have Myles Rice, potentially Kanan Carlisle, potentially Gabe Cupps, Kai Newton. We have guys coming back in the backcourt. All those guys will be juniors in the Big Ten. And playing time might be hard to come by for Jalen Harrelson. He has some stuff to figure out. I'm not trying to downplay him. He is an incredible talent. He was on Team USA. He reps Team USA. I got to rep him. He's one of ours. But the playing time for him would be much harder to find here than it would at Notre Dame. So got to do what's best for him. I don't tarnish his reputation by any measure for his decision. We're big game hunting. On to the next one. That's just how it has to be here. And speaking of the next one, Braylon had a busy week last week. last Monday being visited by UConn, then Indiana, then UNC, each suitor making the case prior to him making his decision. Tipton reported that Braylon will make his decision on 24/7 Sports on Wednesday, October 23rd. Of course, I will be tuning into that as I did the Jalen Harrelson one. I just hope there is a far more favorable outcome for me personally. On to Bryson Tiller. Bryson Tiller has announced his final 4 possible schools, with Indiana among the mix. The rest of the teams, Auburn, Georgia Tech, and Kansas. He is currently ranked number 20 overall by 24/7 Sports and is a composite 5-star prospect. Again, the top caliber talent that we want. Let's go out there and hunt these guys. Let's fill them in with top caliber talent that wants to come play here, like in through the portal. Keep going after these top guys, much like Braylon is at the top. Another top 30 recruit, Eric Ribe, is down to his 5 schools. Those 5 schools being Indiana, Oregon, Kansas, Connecticut, and Creighton. We're in the discussion for some very, very talented prospects, and I said this about the last recruitment cycle, but I feel good about this one. Entirely atmosphere-based recruiting here on the Often Daunted podcast. And the atmosphere feels good. I thought it felt good about Jalen Harrelson. I was wrong. I can be wrong. Whatever. All right. And that's going to be it for the Indiana news. Now let's head on to the national news for you. The national news around the conference. You get it. All right. Last WNBA news for the 2024 to 2025 season from me, as everyone I care to follow has been bounced. Caitlin had all but one of the 66 votes cast for the Rookie of the Year. And yes, I am bringing this up because it came out since the time of my last episode. And I want to know who that one person is. I believe that we, as the press consuming public, deserve the right to know who did that. It's absolutely crazy. Which respected journalists, because how do you get that vote if you're not? You have to have some kind of resume behind you. Which one of them just threw out objectivity altogether to cast the vote with an absolute agenda? It's crazy. We should be able to know, because I need to know who not to listen to. I need to know who not to consume. Prayers and best wishes to Fred Hoiberg on a much more serious level, because she was one vote shy of unanimous. She still won. Who cares? Prayers and best wishes sent out to Fred Hoiberg. Just recently had his pacemaker replaced. Heart surgery to any extent, scary stuff. You know, he isn't testing it to the limits that we saw Juwan throughout his Big Ten tenure. But Fred Hoiberg, he can be a hothead. He can really chew into his guys. And yeah, man, it's these coaches, man. Their hearts need to be strong, because they're putting up with a lot on that sideline. Again, prayers to him and his family right now. Utah State joining the Pac-12 along with Gonzaga. Yes, it has been since the Gonzaga news dropped that I dropped an episode. But after Brett McMurphy, was outed for false reporting the Gonzaga news to join the Pac-12, where the Gonzaga AD even made an announcement saying, I don't know where this information's coming from, only for the very next week to flip and say, we're joining the Pac-12. Absolutely crazy. I'm sure Brett McMurphy had the right source. Pretty crazy how they dragged him. But even if he was, it's so crazy, because maybe it was a guess. Maybe somebody had to have a guess at that time, because they were going to be bouncing any time now. But that is a pretty large adjustment in the college basketball landscape. Gonzaga heading to the Pac-12. If they're heading into stiffer competition, maybe that Gonzaga auto bid is not as certain as it used to be. They really owned their conference, and in the Pac-12, they're going to have a little more competition. John Rothstein last Monday tweeted, well-embedded moles in Bloomington have sent word that the early surprise at Indiana has been Stanford transfer Kanon Carlisle, making an impact on both sides of the ball, a key piece in the Hoosiers' loaded transfer class. Our boy John Rothstein out here sharing the good word and preaching Kanon Carlisle's graces. You just love to see it, and I just wanted to share it. Rothstein also shared his Big Ten impact freshman, and unfortunately can't give him as much praise here. No Bryson, but ultimately I understand how that makes sense. Each of these other dudes should have a mountain of minutes compared to Bryson, just based on the talent of their respective rosters. Those five guys by John being Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Kasparis Jakusionis, Derek Queen, and Will Riley. After all the Big Ten and SEC ADs met up to discuss the future hand in hand, they've recently been reported to be requesting 4 automatic spots for each of the conferences from the College Football Playoff Committee. So 2/3 of every national playoff will be Big Ten and SEC. And this absolutely does affect basketball. It does. Where does this end? I genuinely feel like that is a strong-armed demand by the SEC and the Big Ten, but the people are like, yeah, they're doing it so that they each get 3 automatically. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the reason, man. I think they're making outrageous demands so that they can just have an out. Like, I think that them making these demands is them pressing the issue and furthering us towards the Big Ten and SEC Super League. Like, they're looking for reasons, man. The second that they're like, oh no, you don't get all those automatic 4, they'll be like, okay, maybe we should do our own thing. And I think that each of those ADs would love to do their own thing. I have to imagine that room was so packed with ego that I don't know how anyone could breathe. But yeah, I believe that each of those Big Ten and SEC ADs absolutely wants to start a Super League. And yeah, I say that they are trying to make like just outrageous demands so that they can be told no and they can whine about it. And then they can be like, we're going to take our ball and start our own. And that would affect basketball, because I hope to God that they would have an equally respected basketball league to go with that football Super League. Ugh. All right, I promise that's all the conference realignment and conference talk. Since it was also NBA Media Day, yeah, I'm bringing up other Big Ten players in the NBA. The Grizzlies have been promoting the tandem of Ja and Zach Edey, and I love the content from the Grizzlies. I love Zach Edey in another jersey. He looks beautiful in a Grizzlies jersey. Again, I think Purdue's preseason outlook is a deeply concerning cheap shot by their own supporters. Absolutely downplaying the impact that Zach Edey had on that team, which is crazy for a 2-time National Player of the Year. I don't get where they get off disrespecting him, thinking that they aren't going to take a giant setback not replacing that. It's a damn shame that their fans can't respect the 2-time Player of the Year. Like, this is the one time Purdue, you will only ever have a one-time Player of the Year, maybe. Like, the next time you have one, he's getting paid if he doesn't have a visa loophole. All this to say, I'm going to support NBA Zach Edey. It's my favorite bit now. Like, I'm just going to support Zach Edey, and if anything, just to poke fun at Purdue for thinking that they are just reloading with 5, maybe 4 freshmen. I forget what Kanon would have made it. That's just disrespectful to him, and I won't have that here. I will continue to be amazed by both the daftness and the power wielded by the Michigan State fan base, especially after coming across Spartan Avenue, where writer Trevor Michael went through MSU's schedule to give his humble prediction of 14-6 for this year's Michigan State team. I have to say that would leave. It's outrageous. That's absolutely outrageous. I mean, the backbone of this team for next season is a scrawny center. And like in a conference that isn't usually great to have those things in. It's 14-6 is a share of the title, or if it's not, it's just outright owning it. And I will never get how the media, everyone can get wrapped in the Michigan State narrative every single offseason. How is this team projected to do just as well as, better than last year's team did, who definitely didn't live up to the hype they had? I'll never get it. I'll never get it. I just brought that up to bitch about Michigan State. Cole Amundsen with Busting Brackets compiled his top 100 players listing for the upcoming season, with Umar Ballo being the first Hoosier listed at number 16. He had Malik Renew at number 36, Myles at number 74. Yeah, it was a decent enough list, minus one glaring name left off, that being the likes of Mackenzie. I just wanted to bring up this list to say nobody seems to have made proper note of just where Mackenzie left off last season. All of these preseason reports, all the preseason rankings, the preseason projections, teams, they seem to forget that Mackenzie was starting to come on so aggressively at the end. He was becoming the player, the 5-star that we believed we were taking in. It took him learning the defense, learning how to play college defense, and just knowing knowing how to find a spot. He finally was able to do it, and we really started cashing in on his production down the line. And you saw that in the results of the way our Big Ten regular season ended. I think if he takes a jump, which he will, because he's a sophomore, it's going to be astounding. It's going to blow people away. They're going to totally forget where he left off, because the beginning of the season did skew his overall stats that aggressively. But again, he came on so hard at the end that they had to share the Big Ten Freshman of the Year with him, with a guy who was setting the record, who took Jared Sullinger's record for most Big Ten Freshmen of the Weeks. Yeah, not enough is being said about Mackenzie Mbako, and that's why I'm here on the Often Daunted podcast to just praise him. So, and lastly, another Caitlin Clark story. Sorry, Caitlin Clark. The effect is real. It's a lasting one. And Iowa, the Iowa Hawkeyes women's basketball team, they recently announced that general public seating for the upcoming Iowa Hawkeyes women's basketball season has sold out. Absolutely astounding to see that a women's program in the Big Ten has sold out, and that is still after Caitlin has already left. Awesome to have her in this conference. Like, it was so, I hated playing against her, but man, she really did something to women's basketball, and did something to Big Ten women's basketball in particular. Yeah, not a lot of national news. I've been saving the thoughts on the Big Ten Media Day for that segment coming up, so please stick around for that. We'll get into that right after Flaunted and the Daunted. Let's go, new segment. All right, Flaunted and the Daunted. We're keeping it short, sweet, really easy segment. Just pointing here, boom, Flaunted, listing them. Daunted, listing them. Why? Let's go. Starting with Flaunted, Kurt, and the rest of the Indiana Hoosiers absolutely flaunted this week. Again, I gave them all the praise at the beginning, but they are truly doing something with this program that we haven't seen since 1967, folks. Like, since 1967, there have been so many things since 1967. Oddly enough, that's the subject of the Hoosier History Hit, so stick around for that at the end. They're absolutely flaunted, because I definitely can't call them daunted. This is the least daunted football team I've ever paid attention to. I'm so excited every Saturday, man, which is such a new feeling for anybody who attended Indiana University. It really is. You can say the Michael Penix season, but that was during COVID, so it's entirely new. Flaunted. Indiana Pro Potential with the highest attended Indiana Pro Day for basketball. Mike Woodson's third. having the actual talent like to back up the need for this event is that's something to be proud of in its own right, that you are able to consistently bring in that talent that needs to be looked at by the next level. And Indiana pro potential, that absolutely stays up there. And much assisted by the last flaunted. Flaunted is Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware made his NBA preseason debut Tuesday. At the time of this recording, the game's still going on, so I don't have the stats. But Kel'el Ware, welcome to the NBA. Thanks for your time as the Hoosier. Once always. Flaunted. All right, for your Daunted, we'll go through them a little quicker. Daunted, Bud Elliott of the Cover 3 podcast and SEC bias all around. Bud last Monday said that a 9-3 Ole Miss would deserve to get in over an 11-1 Indiana. And I do want to give credit to Tom Fernelli on the podcast for calling out just how horseshit to an extent. Like he did everything but call it horseshit with his mannerisms. And I truly appreciate that. But it is alarming how all these SEC dudes, they're just looking to line themselves up for Paul Feinbaum's departure. I want to say retirement. I want to pray retirement. But whenever Paul Feinbaum is gone, these guys are going to murder each other for that spot. And that's the dream for them. That's the dream for them. They all want to be minister of SEC propaganda. And until that job is left vacant by him, they're going to keep trying to do this, keep sharing this propaganda, and keep trying to make their case to be the heir. Knock it off. Since going on JR's Big Ten Huddle show, check it out on YouTube. Big Ten Huddle, do some appearances on there representing Indiana basketball. Sorry if you hate that. But since going to JR's Big Ten show, he told me that he walked it back, but his bias, it's unreal. It's unreal. That was his truth. He was speaking his truth in that moment, even if he says he's walking it back. Other Daunted individuals this week, the Brewers still utilizing the Undaunted up until they met the Mets and went down, losing to the mother-loving Mets. The Mets. Get your Daunted asses out of here. Anyone who thinks I give a shit about not playing anyone and being 6-0, they're Daunted. You think I give a shit after playing in the Big Ten East for a decade? Couldn't give a shit. Daunted. Purdue football, Daunted. That was your Daunted. Let's get on to Burke's Big Five. All right, Burke's Big Five, big team nickname origins. And before we go down the five that I truly liked, I wanted to share the two that are the absolute worst. You want to talk a worst Big Ten team name origin? The school held a naming contest in 1925. Michigan Staters was the original winner, but a local sports writer sought for a shorter and more heroic name. So they went with Spartans. Spartans was chosen, and it grew in popularity, and here we are today. What a terrible origin, man. Also, USC, the LA Times sports editor. Again, it's just sports reporters. They just give them the corniest names. Corniest, dumb, non-relevant names. Not referencing anything about the local people, the traditions, the history of the area, nothing. Terrible names. Also, USC. The LA Times sports editor was asked to name them in 1912, and he wanted to embody the fighting spirits of the athletes. And that name sucks. Shitty names from these two programs, both of them. Have some pride in where you came from. Let's get on to some names that are actually, clever, relevant, and awesome. Like number 5, Oregon. Early Oregonians were called Webfoots by Californians because Western Oregon was so rainy and muddy. And the name eventually became the Ducks once a deal with Disney was put in place. Originally, the Webfoots, I respect that name origin. Oregon, it's rainy and muddy. You got to kind of be a Webfoot. I like it. I like that. I don't like that it's Disney that made it the Ducks. Webfoots would still be an awesome name, probably a better name if they were still the Webfoots today, but I'm going to give the Ducks their credit where it's due. Number 4, again, I'm going to give credit where it's due. Got to show them some love, actually, the Boilermakers. It's a tough name that refers to their leading program at the time. working with hot as hell metals and hot as hell forges. Back when this stuff was pretty rudimentary, pretty great name, just considering the overall institution and community. The first use of the name for the Boilermakers was in 1898 when Purdue beat Wabash 44-0. And the Daily Argus News referred to the team as Burly Boilermakers from Purdue. I do respect that name. All props to them. Number 3, Badgers. Wisconsin is actually on the very outskirts of where the American Badger is known to roam, but they are called this because of the miners that settled the area. The Wisconsin name, the Badger State, comes from the miners who settled the area in between the 1820s and 1830s, and they were named Badgers because instead of having, had to be on the move a lot. Instead of having homes, they dug out homes in the side of hills, like literally living like a badger. I respect that name. Like, you're named after miners' houses built in the side of a hill. It's a good one. Number two is the Wolverines. I don't like giving Michigan credit. I don't like giving Purdue credit. This is all gross, but man, it came out of the Toledo War, a land dispute between Ohio and Michigan in 1835, in which the highfalutin Ohioans detailed the depraved, animalistic nature of those to the north, and the Michigan Wolverines to the north absolutely owned it. Respect it. Take the derogatory nature of it, flip it, and own it. Lastly, number 1, and of course it's unbiased, and I'm never gonna just push my agenda here, but it's the Hoosiers. Much like our team is good, we don't even need a mascot sentiment. Our team's so good, we don't even really need a true origin. We don't need a true name. Possibly this name comes about because of Harry Hoser. I think I've talked about it before on a few Hoosier history hits, but a slave turned Methodist missionary in the area as the Indiana Territory came to be populated toward the late 1700s. And just awesome, man. I love the name. I love the name because I love the institution. I love the program. This is my list. Hoosiers are number 1. You always find a mostly non-biased top 5 here on Burke's Big 5, so please come back for the next one. Let's get into the segment for the week. All right, for your segment this week, I'm going to be sharing some of my takeaways from Big Ten Media Day, as well as sharing my Power 5 for each position in the conference. That is just the 5 players I think are taking up those power ranking spots, showing their dominance at each of those positions. If you have a problem with those, please feel free to comment who you think I should have ranked in that power ranking below. Or feel free to share your thoughts with me across all socials at Often Daunted. But I usually do most of my socialing on X, so check me out there in particular. But let's get on with it. Indiana takeaways. I want to start with the Indiana takeaways at the top. Big Ten Media Day. It's a vanilla-ass event. Nothing of real circumstance and weight happens at this, but there was some to take away if you read between the lines with a little discretion. But Mike Woodson, the single biggest takeaway with Mike's overall appearance at Big Ten Media Day is he's experimenting. When asked about the roster, the personnel, the lineups, the cohesion of this team, you really just got a sense that the Hoosiers are working on multiple looks. He's throwing out multiple rosters. He's trying to see what best works for each of these guys right now, as they absolutely should. This roster has too much quality in its depth to not see what you got, not see absolutely every tool you can work with. I'm so excited to hear this because all of his answers were so much more sure last year when we knew that it was going to be Malik and Ware. We all knew it. We could say we would like to see McKenzie float down to the 4. We all knew that that's what it was. But this really looks like Mike is experimenting with it. He's trying to get different looks. We're going to find open shooters here. He made mention of just McKenzie and Luke really getting involved and possibly sliding down to the 4. That is something we didn't see much last season. When we did see it towards the end of the season, we saw it yield some decent results. And small ball, I'm all for it. I welcome the additional play style that this Indiana team might have, the additional play styles, because it sounds like he is working just multiple looks. So I really loved it. I wanted to share his appearance on the college basketball podcast. Again, there isn't much that they say at Big Ten Media Day, so I wanted to share this. But Mike Woodson talked about prioritizing the backcourt players. He did utilize Mike Woodson in the third person when saying Mike Woodson and his staff had to go out and get some guys. But Burke White doesn't hate that. In fact, Burke White might start utilizing that. Burke White thinks Cignetti might do that. I'm just trying to model most of my decisions after Curt Cignetti right now, but I think Burke White might start. I can't even do it. I can't do it. I'm so not used to doing it that I just can't even do it for this bit right now. All right. Woodson throughout college basketball was the Eyes on College Basketball podcast was minding his P's and Q's. He was not looking to say anything inflammatory. But when discussing the pressures that come with the season and the stress of coaching one of the most prominent programs in the country, we heard Mike go back to it's about winning Big Ten titles and national titles, and I couldn't agree more. It's the cookie cutter answer right now, but it's exactly what I want to hear. The best thing taken from this interview was easily when Mike shared more about how often he sees Umar and Malik playing side by side, again, playing into that experimenting with multiple looks, multiple fives. It bodes well for us. I truly believe that. He had said, well, right now we're still tinkering with different lineups. I know I can play two bigs together. I've done that in the past. Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis, Malik and Kalel Ware. I know that I can do that. I know Balo and Malik can coexist without a doubt. I'm trying to break it up and do something a little bit different. That's kind of how I played in New York a little bit. Malik, I know, can play some five. We got LT. I like the name for Langdon Hatton. I like the name LT, who can also play five for us. So I really got a 3 big man rotation if I need to use that. And then he went on, like I said, with the experimentation, he went on to say, so I got different ways to go, but I'm still in tinkering mode trying to figure it out. This summer, I didn't expect with that much because this summer I didn't experiment with that much because I wanted these guys to kind of grow together and just kind of get to know each other on the floor. And it's been a nice transition now over into official practice to the point now I can, mix and match. And we've been doing that a little bit, which is kind of nice. Yes, that is kind of nice, Mike. I totally agree with you. This is good. This is good. This is good for us. He is looking for ways we can capitalize on the talent that is just abundant in this roster. We need to find every way we can for this season to yield all the results we want out of it. For Myles, again, I'm going to go through the Indiana bit at Big Ten Media Day before sharing some of my thoughts on the rest of the conference. Myles, he spoke to Woody's transfer recruitment and how quickly he was able to make his family feel like one of his own. It really, he in particular spoke to a breakfast at Uptown Cafe being the moment he saw Indiana University as the fit. And I got to say, Uptown Cafe's biscuits and gravy, I got them on my official visit to become a student at Indiana University. And I'm not going to lie, they were a decent influencer. I didn't apply anywhere else, but damn, they're good. It was nice to hear Myles' side of how Woody brought him into the fold. Myles more so spoke on looking to keep some of the speed he's come to know by playing in the Pac-12 despite moving into the Big Ten, and that is going to be a huge factor. If the merging of these two conferences can kind of yield a hybrid of the two play styles of each of those conferences, then I think that's the best outcome for the Big Ten. I think we were stuck in our ways of just big bruising basketball, Pac-12, maybe a little too cutesy with it. If we can find a middle area, I like what that play style could look like in this conference. And I like the idea of Myles being at the forefront of bringing that play style into the conference. Trey had shared several words at Big Ten Media Day, and he had said that the Hoosiers are going to be looking to play with speed. He spoke to the media about the plethora of guys we have that are able to run the floor with and without the ball in their hands. He spoke glowingly to Myles' character and his ability to already run the operation, and just how he's been able to be such a fixture of bringing this team together at times throughout the offseason. And that's the intangibles that you want to hear that Myles is bringing to the program. Trey went on to say went on to share sentiments about the Hoosiers have been consciously looking to spend time together and build a camaraderie. And that is saying something. Like, if he's making note of that, maybe that was something that Trey, as a co-captain, that kind of had to take a backseat to the captainship. Kind of. He was co-captain, but I would say this was Xavier's team last season, but I like to hear that this team's working to consciously develop relations, consciously, garner that camaraderie that will be crucial when the Big Ten season rolls around. On Malik, Trey had spoke to this offseason being Malik's offseason to sweat the little things, and that was music to my ears, because Malik is such a natural talent that if he can sweat the little things, the closeouts, the discipline, the accountability, the small, minute things in the game, it's going to be incredible. He's the most gifted. His footwork it's truly elite. I'm convinced it is. His ability to spin in the paint is second to none in my head. And if he can sweat those little things, cut down on his fouls, and we can get the most out of Malik Renew, this is going to be an awesome season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Trey says that this is the most talent this team has had since he's been here. And I truly believe that to be the case. Look at the roster. You can say we say that every offseason. We might we might say that every offseason, but if you welcomed in a objective third party, they would have to agree with Trey. I would think so. And last thing that Trey had shared, he said Luke Goody is the type of dude that sacrifices for this team, and that was music to my ears as well, man. My thought is Luke could have played somewhere else. He could have played for more time. He wants to play for the Hoosiers. He'll be willing to sacrifice. This is one of us. This is one of us donning the candy stripes. If you're going to ask a guy to take a grenade, it's going to be one of us that will. I'm so happy to have one of those guys in the program. And it was masterclass by these two. They're vets with a microphone, because they just said everything that you want to hear and nothing that you don't. Keep it vague. Don't show your cards. And a decent showing by our two leaders. Some thoughts on the rest of the Big Ten. So the round table format for this year's Big Ten Media Day, that is trash. That is trash. And you know what? There is potential behind it, but the pairings they have, entirely trash. Like, if you're going to do that roundtable format, you're going to have three coaches up there at the same time. There should be a 18-person committee that is made up of entirely fans, the most biased fans you've ever seen, who come up with those three-man groupings. Got to mix it up with some rivals. You got to mix it up with rivals. Got to mix it up with just mix it up. It was just the most vanilla pairings you could imagine. One over. So when Michigan is rolling up with Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, I am truly I'm upset. I'm upset because Robbie Gale should have had to legally represent Michigan in this Big Ten Media Day. You don't get to leave your team for an in-conference rival, like your biggest rival, and not have to answer for it. Like, he should have been there to take some questions on that for sure. Honestly, is Dusty holding his players accountable? One could really start to question. Standout was absolutely Peichel getting a 2-on-1 put on him between Willard and Mick Cronin. If you guys are going to watch one of the round tables, I'm not going to tell you to watch the Indiana one. I'm going to tell you to watch that one. It was astounding watching Peichel get absolutely bullied by Mick Cronin and Kevin Willard, of all people. Like, they just, every single time they were talking about, oh, he's going to find out about coaching these top talent rookies, these top talent freshmen. It was so condescending, everything about their talk. With the history the two shared, they were just like brothers picking on the cousin. And Mick Cronin, I kind of like this guy. He's coming in brazen into the Big Ten. He knows the assignment. He knows that, hey, best part to make yourself at home here in the conference is to make some damn enemies. And I think he's going to be very good at that out of the gate. I'm never interested in visiting LA. I'm never interested in it. I would rather not. But I have to admit that I turned left on Sunset Boulevard was a hell of a line from him. He dropped a, hey, man, it's fine because I turned left on Sunset Boulevard. And I was like, you know what? I hate LA, but that sounds pretty good. I mean, that's a good line for sure. It'll be fun watching him get humbled for sure. Again, I think that UCLA was playing Big Ten basketball in the Pac-12. That's why they found so much success zigging when all the other teams were playing quick and zagging. But now they're just in where the rest of the teams play like that. So I have to imagine that water will find its level with their play style. Other thoughts? Credit to Painter. Credit to Matt Painter. He's sticking by his guns. Now we get to see if this works in the post-ED transfer era, which I truly believe it won't. He's saying Cam has the necessary physicality to play the 4 at 6'7". I expect small ball following what would be some of the biggest ball that college basketball has ever seen. The days of being able to get and keep these guys you need based on 20 years of built-up goodwill and development and, everything that Matt Painter is great at. He's great at that stuff. But the years of getting guys based on that, they're dwindling. They're dwindling. Just ask Tom Izzo. They are awesome tiebreakers in recruiting. The ability to develop is an awesome tiebreaker for what is the initial financial debate. Yeah. So we'll see how this non-transfer Painter is going to work without what is the biggest game changer in Zach Edey. Also, Painter with the girlfriend issue. You had to have seen that. That being the prevailing talking point from this media day was a absolute treat. It was a treat. Painter doesn't want to call girlfriend guys, so that was pretty nice. I know you guys all knew about that one. Like I said about the groupings before, I much rather would have seen like Woodson and Painter for sure, and maybe throw Brad on there, but get like Diebler, May, and Fran McCaffrey on one. Get Izzo, Peichel, and Cronin. Yeah, I just think there was opportunity for so much more. Out of Illinois and their media day, you just saw that Brad emphasized that Illinois is going to be taking positional size and shooting. And I had the State of Basketball guys on the first episode of the YouTube, the 105th episode of the podcast, and they had spoke how Ben Humrickhouse, I believe, is going to be ideal to fill that role. But another thing from the sit down that was with Brad, Dusty was sitting down with Brad, and Dusty was discussing how he is looking forward to how often he feels that he can play Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden together. And to that, I said, oh my God. Oh my God. We are not alone. These could be some fun matchups if they're looking to go two bigs and we can send out Malik Renew and Umar Ballo. Those Michigan matchups could be very fun ones. As for Michigan State, they're showing at Big Ten Media Day. It was basically just Izzo going out of his way to talk about how entitled athletes are. Like it was at a moment where Dana Altman was just discussing how, how difficult it is to go out there and get these guys these days. And then, Izzo goes, yeah, Yeah, there's just such a sense of entitlement with these athletes nowadays. And I'm like, Jesus, man, you aren't advertising yourself well as anything but the curmudgeon you consistently decide to come off as. It's Michigan State fans are convinced otherwise, but I don't see how the writing isn't on the wall. He isn't even willing to play the game. Tom Izzo, man. And I was just thinking about, what would I want to ask these coaches if they were hooked up to a polygraph and could ask them anything at these Big Ten media days. And I just wanted to present some of the questions that I thought should have been asked, including Pikel. What does it say about the state of the program that guys like Moat Mag and who we thought was Mr. Rutgers, Clifford Omarui, leave on the brink of the most hyped season in Rutgers history? I really would like some more insight on that. Yes, $2 million is hard to turn down, but the fact that Clifford Omarui was looking for his bag elsewhere tells me that, he wasn't in on what they were selling him that season. He was sold sitting. He was sold. He had to have been sold like, hey, real talk here. It's going to be the freshman show next year. And I'm going to look for things to say about our opponents, and that's what I found there. So another question I would ask some of the Big Ten coaches, I would ask Fran. So, Fran, will Thad be legally adopting your sons as he takes them all in, as they appear to have fled from you? Because the amount of McCaffreys ending up in the Butler basketball program is becoming something of note. And my third and final question, if I could ask anyone anything on it, would be Eric over here. Eric, you have one singular individual returning in the entire building at USC. That is staff and players. One person familiar with the trials and tribulations of college basketball in the city of LA. Harrison Hornery. Yes, if many of my colleagues don't know the name Harrison Hornery, don't be alarmed. It's probably for good reason. Last season, Hornery played in 26 games, making 4 starts, averaging 3.3 points per game and 2.8 rebounds per game. How do you settle an entire roster of 17 to 20-somethings in LA in a semester's time on the back of an infrastructure set up by one individual, an infrastructure of one individual remaining? That player. Like I said, you got to recruit your own guys every year, and Mike Woodson did a great job at keeping the Indiana core. Like, he kept the young core that we had last season, and he made sure that every guy we needed coming back was coming back. You have one person familiar with college basketball in LA in that building. What you gonna do, Eric? How does that work? How does navigating not only the academics of it, the just living in LA, the social dynamics that come with moving, transferring, setting up a new group of friends. It just seems like there could be a lot of trouble made while an entire program finds its footing in a new location. Thoughts, Eric? All right. The Big Ten preseason media poll is out. Just sharing my thought on it. It's right here. You'll see it right there. You had to expect that. You had to expect that that's how that was going to shake out. Purdue has earned the right to sit up there until somebody knocks them off. But again, I just don't see how they could possibly not take a step back with losing the 2-time National Player of the Year, who was an absolute unicorn in college basketball, not only for the way that he played, but for the way that no other school could pay him. Absolute unicorn. He was a unicorn of a unicorn in that regard. I don't know how they're going to stay number 1, but Indiana creeping there in the 2 spot. UCLA hyped at number 3. They're going to take a step back. They're going to do so much traveling this season. It was interesting because both Mick Cronin and Pikel talked about how they were looking to the transfer portal for senior leadership, for veteran leadership. And credit to Mike Woodson and company for keeping the guys we did, because we have the leadership in-house. We didn't have to go elsewhere for it. We could go get guys who brought tools, who brought roles that can contribute to what we already had here. I love it. Indiana at number 2 is too low, by the way, if I didn't already say that. We should be number 1. UCLA number 3, Illinois number 4, Michigan State 5, blah, 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 blah. Yep, all right there. 24 Big Ten preseason team selections. And just going down the list, we only had representation of 1 with Umar Ballo. The rest of the team being made up of Peyton Sanford, Dawson Garcia, Great Osobor, Brooks Barnheiser, Bruce Thornton, Jackson Shellstad, Ace Baldwin Jr., and Braden Smith. He made the team last year, like Braden Smith made the team last year. Despite my admittedly biased thoughts on how he got there, he did. He deserves a spot here. He does. Although he's going to have to do it he's going to have to do a lot more with everything that we've lost. Like his top 4 assist generators for him, I think all left. Gillis, Jones, Edey, maybe 3 of the top 4. Yeah, he's going to have to do a lot. And lastly, Dylan Harper. Everyone is telling me Great Osobor is going to make the jump and it's not going to be an issue. Everyone is saying that. I am just not convinced. I'm not convinced. He's undersized for what he does. He does what he does very well, but he's undersized. And what he does just doesn't really speak to an undersized player. I don't know. It'll be an interesting adjustment to the Big Ten, and I don't know. But yeah, lastly, John Fanta shared his Big Ten Media Day storylines, and I just wanted to share those because Fanta's the GOAT. He's my favorite college sports personality. He is the funniest. He is the most passionate. I love his content. And he shared his 5 Big Ten Media Day storylines. The vibes are high in Bloomington. Could Indiana win the Big Ten was the first storyline. And to which he said the Hoosiers absolutely can. Mike Woodson and his staff went on the attack this offseason to collect the nation's number 2 transfer class, according to 24/7 Sports, bringing in an all-American caliber big man in Umar Ballo, guards Myles Rice and Kanon Carlisle, and a sharpshooter from Illinois in Luke Good. Makes for a really nice group of additions. But in this sport, roster retention is so critical, and IU was able to garner that momentum, much like I talked about, with the return of junior star Malik Renew, rising sophomore standout Mackenzie Mbako, and veteran leader Trey Galloway. The Hoosiers have a blend of weapons to make this Woodson's best team. You'll love to hear that. I mean, come on. You'll love to hear that. Fanta says we can do it. I love it. I love it, John. The rest of his storylines, I'm not going to share the details on all of them. The other 4 storylines that he had on the season for the Big Ten, Tom Izzo is challenging Jaden Akins to rise up as his next star, to which I said, yeah, he's going to need one because all of his stars left, of course. But I could see that being a storyline. Well done, Fanta. Fanta's 3rd storyline. New men on campus. Freshmen look to live up to the hype at Rutgers and Maryland. Yes, the both of those teams are going to have to rely on some very talented freshmen, but freshmen nonetheless. Rutgers big time in in their backcourt, and Maryland and Derek Queen. Interesting how Derek Queen and Julian Reese will be playing together in the front court. Willard was sure to point that out during media day. And while I saw the pains of having, we thought there were pains in having Kalel Ware and Malik Renew both down there at the same time. The thought of Derek Queen and Julian Reese operating in the front court together is a congested thought. I credit to Derek Queen. I wanted him desperately. He would have been a great addition to this team. I don't know how many minutes he would have gotten comparatively to him going to Maryland, and may have been part of the reason he did so. But it's like Julian Reese, he doesn't do any of the things that Malik and Kalel both could do. Like Malik doesn't shoot it often, but he can. It's an option. It's going to be a congested front court for Maryland, and which is saying something because it's been a slow, oppressive offense for them for a while, and yeah, Derek Queen and Julian Reese. I'm going to tune in to that. Again, nothing on Derek Queen. It's mostly Julian Reese. I truly believe nobody's cashed in on their sister's clout. Like, it's crazy. Usually goes, yeah, it's crazy. No more on that. It's May in Michigan was his fourth storyline. It's May in Michigan and the Wolverines are underrated. He believes May will surpass their ninth projected. John Fanta believes that the Wolverines will surpass the ninth projected spot that they have on this year's preseason rankings. And I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Michigan one way or the other. They have a great coach. I'm objective enough to admit that. But it's going to be interesting to see how they all meld together and see if that too big front court is going to work for them. It's worked for us to an extent, but that was also with the likes of Trace Jackson Davis and Khalil Ware, who by every measure of their next step were all great talents, like next level talents. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Michigan. UCLA can challenge for their Big Ten title, and Mick Cronin is confident in his Bruins. And while I will agree with John Fanta on Mick Cronin being confident in his Bruins because he definitely came into that Big Ten Media Day confident, I almost want to say he did so with almost a fake confidence. He knew the assignment. He knows he needs to make a splash here in the Big Ten. You make some enemies, get some storylines going. UCLA is all of a sudden in the Big Ten a little more firm than the other three. Yeah, UCLA has a contender in John's eyes, and I respect the take. I just hope to God it's wrong. All right, now on to my personal Power 5 for each position. I'm not diving into this like wholehearted, like I'm not going to be diving into this super detailed breaking down every guy. I'm just going to be sharing my 5 at each position. That's 25 players, so we're going to rattle through this rather quickly. 25 players, let's go. Starting with the point guard position, I wanted to start with number 5. This, again, power ranking each position. Number 5, Ace Baldwin. Ace Baldwin Jr., returning absolute menace defensively. Not expecting much for Penn State, but that's mostly because of his support. I still believe Ace Baldwin Jr. is a top 5 point guard in this league, and that's where I have him. Number 4, Dylan Harper. The hype has to be real because there's just far too much of it for it to be fake. Dylan Harper, I'm going to have him right here for, again, any of these are subject to move after I see 1 second of actual basketball, but Dylan Harper, number 4. Number 3, Myles Rice. Did more or less than Jackson Selstad in the Pac-12. Number 3, Myles Rice. I've only spoke glowingly about every time I talk about Myles Rice on this show, so I will point you to that. Number 2, Bruce Thornton. I truly love Bruce Thornton's game. It's going to be his car to drive in Ohio State, and we'll see how he does with it. I think he is number 2 right now in the point guard I think he is number 2 for point guards amongst Big Ten point guards. Number 1, it's got to be Braden. It hurts. I'm not happy about it, but our guys have got stuff to prove. Braden has stuff to prove this season, but because he was on this last season, I'm going to leave him right here. He was the Big Ten point guard, and he deserves the number 1 spot for now until the second I can take him out of it. Shooting guard. Let's start with shooting guard. Number 5, Meechie Johnson. Meechie Johnson transferring back to Ohio State, heading into the Jake Diebler program. It seems like his addition is going to be it got a lot of people talking, got a lot of people hyped for the Ohio State Buckeyes this season, and I see that meaning a bunch of playing time for him. I think that hype is going to warrant him some minutes, and we'll see some production from him in Diebler's offense. Trey Galloway, number 4. this just speaks to my trust in our depth because I don't even know if Trey will start here, but Kanon Carlisle could very well end up here if he becomes the starting shooting guard and Trey Galloway becomes relieving point guard to Myles and relieving shooting guard or just anything back guard tool guy. Trey Galloway, got to put him here. Number 3, Sebastian Mack. UCLA's own Sebastian Mack. Number 2, Kasparis Jakusionis. Talked about him the last 2 episodes of this podcast, especially with Sonny Verma of the Illini cast. I don't often believe hype, but some of this hype might have some substance behind it. Kasparis Jakusionis, number 2. I liked Roddy Gale Jr.'s game. I don't know if it was just I just caught him on his best games every time I decided to tune in. But something about my viewing of Roddy Gale makes him play out of his mind. I greatly respect his game and everything that I've seen of it. Roddy Gale Jr., number 1 shooting guard. I think he's going to be asked to do a lot for that Michigan side because there's not really that many names that I can point to on that roster and say that guy's going to do a lot. Roddy Gale, I feel comfortable in doing that. Small forward. We are going to be running through the Big Ten small forwards. At number 5, I'm going to put him up here because I saw a dunk and it was sick. And he is objectively one of the better athletes in this conference. Now, does that translate into skill and finesse on the court? We will see if he was able to make some steps in that regard. That is number 5, Cohen Carr. Number 4, Brooks Barnhizer. Number 4, Brooks Barnhizer. It's his show in Northwestern now. We will see if Northwestern becomes whatever Northwestern always was without Boo Buie, now that they are without Boo Buie. Brooks Barnhizer is going to have to do a lot, and I think that him having to do a lot will mean he can do enough to find himself here in the top 5 among small forwards. Number 3, Ace Bailey. Much like Dylan Harper, for there to be this much hype, there must be something to it. There has to be. And projected top 5 NBA pick, Ace Bailey at number 3. At number 2, I got him here. At number 2, I think he ends up a potential Big Ten Player of the Year. Yes, I do. I can't put the hype of one guy ahead of him, but like that being Ace Bailey, I can't put the hype of Ace Bailey ahead of him. I really can't. There's one guy I'm okay with putting ahead of him right now, but I'm only expecting great things for Mackenzie Mbako, my number 2. Mackenzie Mbako, again, being slept on incredibly for the overall nature of his season, but not pumped up enough for just how his season ended. If he can pick up where it left off, it's going to be crazy. Number 1, Peyton Sandford, the biggest villain in the Big Ten. Well, my favorite for villain of the year, Peyton Sandford. Number 1, he's going to have a bajillion shots. It's going to be the Peyton Sandford show in Iowa, and it's Peyton Sandford co-starring a billion shots. So, all right, power forward. At number 5, freshman hype, Derek Queen. I truly believe he will be one of the best 5 power forwards in this conference. It is a brutal conference. It is a grueling conference in the front court, but I think Derek Queen will be able to step up to that. Will be able to answer the questions as they're called, and I think he finds himself here at number 5. Number 4, I'm going to put Great Osobor. I'm putting Great Osobor here because it appears like I need to. Everyone's hyping up this kid extremely. But, $2 million, that says something. Maybe Washington's bad. Maybe it just says Washington's very bad with their money, but there must be something about this kid. Again, for $2 million, I would want Hall of Fame Osobor. That's just what I would say. Number 3, I have TKR. As the returning piece of the front court in the most dominant team in the Big Ten last year, TKR deserves a spot here in the top 5. Do I think that he will be here by the end of it? Yeah, power forwards. If he moves to the center position, do I think he will be a top? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think he's going to be asked to play the center again. Cam Heide at the 4. Yes, please. But TKR's a power forward. And that's where I'm going to list him. He is listed as a power forward here because that's his position. If Purdue decides to play him at the center, he is playing out of position at the center, just based on his physical measurables. Number 2 amongst power forwards, Malik Renew. I wanted to put him in the number 1 spot, but I have to put Dawson Garcia there just for how much production he is going to be responsible for with the Golden Gophers. Number 2, Malik Renew. Number 1, Dawson Garcia. All right, my top 5 centers. Number 5, Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf coming in, Ivy League Player of the Year. He's going to be... As much as Dusty May was talking about him at Media Day, I really think that he has done some things this offseason to garner Dusty professing that much about him. I could see him having a real impact on that team, and I'm going to put him here at number 5. Number 4, I'm going to put Owen Freeman. Again, the Big Ten co-freshman of the year. Just reliable. He's just the most basic center in the Big Ten, but he is a reliably basic center. So number 4. Number 3, Vlad Golden. Yeah, 2 of these 5 centers are on the same team, which is a part of the reason that Dusty May has said that he is going to be willing to play with the 2 bigs. Vladislav Golden at number 3, coming from FAU with May. Number 2, Malik Renew. Yes, Malik Renew is number 2 for both power forwards and centers. I truly believe that about his game. He is the second best at both of those positions right now, and I truly believe that he could stand to be the first. If he can unlock some things in his game, and again, sweat the little things that Trey talked about in Big Ten Media Day, Malik could be the best center, the best power forward in my mind. I truly believe that. And again, I am ignorantly biased and optimistic in most of my takes, but I could see that being how this turns out. When asked to play the center, I think he could be the most dominant center in the Big Ten. When asked to play the power forward, I think he could be the most dominant power forward in the Big Ten. Malik Renew. Center. Number 1, Umar Ballo. Yep, Umar Ballo. I do want to give a shout out to Ohio State's Aaron Bradshaw. Aaron Bradshaw, second year McDonald's All-Americans who find a new home. You can really unlock something in those guys, and Aaron Bradshaw could find himself on this list. But, of course, after Umar and Malik Renew. Let's get you on to a Hoosier history hit, and then we will get you out of here.
This is your Hoosier history hit.
All right, for your Hoosier history hit this week, I wanted to go down a list of things that are as old as the last time Indiana football started 6-0. This football team has me just so revved up, excited for everything that comes with college football, man. It's unlocked a whole new fandom. It's I've always deemed myself an Indiana football fan, but they haven't given you anything to root on. It's so nice having something worth rooting for, and Coach Signetti has brought us that with Indiana's first 6-0 start since 1967. Other things from 1967, the first McDonald's Big Mac was sold for 45 cents. Walt Disney's Jungle Book was released. O.J. Simpson was running back for USC. Just the winter prior, Super Bowl I was played. The Packers beating the Chiefs 35-10. Aretha Franklin records RESPECT. The automated teller machine is invented, with John Shepherd Barron inventing it in London on June 27th, 1967, or it officially going into service. Doritos. Doritos were first sold nationally in 1967 as a basic corn tortilla chip. Ugh, gross. Throw some spices on it, and now they're a top seller. The handheld calculator. The first handheld calculator was invented in 1967. For anyone coming up in the Indiana school system around the time that I was, The Outsiders is released in 1967. And lastly, Vietnam was raging. All this to say, It's been a long ass time since Indiana football has been 6-0. Take a second, take a breath, celebrate with your loved ones, man, because Coach Cignetti has given us something worth celebrating. All right, let's get you out of here. Please feel free to give me a follow across all socials at Often Daunted. That is at Often Daunted. If you are new to the show, that name is not a reference to this program at all. It is more so a reference to my circumstances and or luck at any given time in my life. The name was conceived 3 years ago. I'm not going to change it because the most rolling football team in the country has a hashtag that is hashtag never daunted. The show's been Often Daunted. Welcome back. And I truly hope that you will stick along. If you do like the show, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, anything you'd like me to bring up in the next show. Please feel free to leave a suggestion. Thank you so much for listening to the Often Daunted podcast. God bless you and yours, Hoosier fans. I'm going to be back at you with a new episode the week after Hoosier Hysteria. One more final offseason episode before we really get rolling into the regular season weekly episodes. Thank you so much. God bless you and yours, Hoosier fans. Luxet Veritas. Take it easy.